it's really a pleasure to to talk about fundraising and social change. It is something that it's very dear to me, and of course, it is always a pleasure to be surrounded by people that are doing such great work and helping some of our most vulnerable. In this case, in particular, I think most of you work with seniors, but anyone that's oftentimes forgotten, regardless of what the cause is. It's someone that puts their time to addressing that deserves everyone's gratitude and including mine. So we're here, as you know, to talk about grant writing. And before we dig into that, let me just, of course, introduce myself. I've been working in fundraising for most of my career. I'm a Portuguese Canadian. I was born in Chatham, Kent, which is in the very south of Ontario, if any of you has heard of it. I grew up in Portugal, but it was when I started my career that I moved to Toronto, where for the past few years I've been splitting my time between Toronto and Portugal. Really just trying to do my best to stay close to the family while spending time in the province and the city that's so special to me. But as I said, for most of my career, I worked in fundraising, particularly doing grant writing, whether it's for smaller charities with a budget of $200,000 and a couple of employees, or nonprofits with several $1 million in their operating budget, employing hundreds of people. And in that time, I had the let's call it pleasure, the challenge of working on small and big grants, whether it's for corporations, for the government, for foundations, and that really allow me to learn all of the nuances at stake and what tends to work better and what tends to work not as well when it comes to grant writing. But we'll see that there's a lot that goes into it beyond just the writing itself. About New Pact, which is the organization that I work with, and that's how I got in touch with the Access and Volunteer Ottawa. New Pact, for those that might not know it, I do know that New Pact has been facilitating other workshops beyond this grant writing workshop. But for those that might not know it, New Pact is a collective of strategists and facilitators from both the nonprofit sector and the for-profit sector that are dedicated to helping organizations enhance their social impact. We believe that stronger communities are, tend to happen when we have better organizations, and that's why we provide a range of affordable training and strategy advice on a range of topics from equity, diversity, and inclusion, fundraising, marketing and communications, impact measurement and evaluation, and human resources. So I will share the organization's contact at the end if you want to contact us for whatever interests you might have. Now, talking a little bit more about how this workshop will take place today. Now, as it says here, this is a workshop. It is not a lecture. I do not intend to spend close to 2 hours just doing a one-sided lecture and talking and just sharing what works for me, what's my experiences. I do wish to hear from you as well. I'm sure that everyone in this call has something very important to share about their fundraising and their grant writing in particular experiences. So by all means, do use the chat to leave comments, of course, to make questions, because this is, a fairly long workshop. I will make the point to have a small break for questions halfway, and then, of course, at the end we'll have time for more questions and answers. But again, by all means, you can drop your comments at any time and your questions, and we'll address them in the right time. I do want to start with a small activity that was suggested by a colleague of mine at New Pact. I've never done it before, but I thought it was quite interesting, which is ask the people in this call, the participants, to in one word, or even using one emoji, or one word and one emoji, to describe or to simply tell us what first comes to mind when talking about grants and grant writing in particular. So again, use one word, one emoji. Can be not it can be super positive, it can be less positive, but let's just start with that. Something something light to start a conversation that can can always be not as light. So feel free to drop in the chat whatever word or emoji comes to. Okay, that's a good one, Caroline. Okay, Nadine. Tense one. Yeah, I'm trying to find the right one myself. It's look for a face that's someone that Imani, absolutely. Reem. That's I think that's the one that we should keep our focus on is that, regardless of all the pain and hassle that it requires, that at the end of the day, it is one of the best sources of funding to keep organizations doing the great work they do. But okay, we have some good ones. We some positives, some semi-positives. I'm definitely gonna take Nadine's cheers as something that that's can be very real when it comes to certain grants. But I like the mix of the mixed feelings that we see here. If I didn't choose one, but I definitely if I had to choose one, it could be um, yeah, the mixed feelings, the how exciting it can be, the prospect of bringing in some very important money for the organization, but at the same time, how overwhelming some grant applications can be. But let's move forward. So what is it really that we'll be doing more specifically here today? So I one of the things that I learned, over these many years that I work in fundraising and grant writing, is that it goes well beyond just the writing of the proposal itself. Um, Anything from finding the right opportunities, the right funders, the right grants within that funder, and understanding whether we're a good fit, whether we meet the eligibility criteria, whether we're ready to apply to that grant. That is something very important in the survey that I sent ahead of this workshop. I did see that quite a few people chose that as one of the things that they wanted to learn more about, which is understanding whether we're a good fit or not. And then, of course, we have the actual proposal writing itself, and including the budget, which I've seen time and time again be the reason why a certain grant is not funded. Um, so we'll try to cover a little bit of that, and also I'll finish a little bit with how AI, which is it's more and more mainstream these days, can help you become not only become a better grant writer, but also doing that work of understanding what opportunities are out there, but also what opportunities are a good fit for your organization and the project in particular that you're looking to see funded. Um, I did have a poll that I wanted to do, but my apologies. I should have thought of that ahead. But I'm not sure if you can. I don't know how to do polls in Google Teams. I'll be honest. But Reem, if you can help me with that, if there is such feature, and I want to believe there is, the poll feature in Google Teams. If you could add this question to the poll, we don't have to wait for the answers. We can keep going, but it would be interesting to see what are people's plans in terms of how much to raise through grants in the next 12 months. Is that possible, Reem?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you. And while Reem is working on that, let's move forward.
Minister's group. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. I think someone forgot to mute their mic.
Yeah.
So-
No, it was them. Okay, hold on. Because
All right, so where should we start when it comes to finding the right grants and most importantly, getting those grants? As I said, for me, there's a set of things that we should know about yourself. When I say yourself, I mean your organization, not you individually, of course. And it's these three things. So mission and vision. Of course, that has to be super clear to us. What is our mission and vision? Otherwise, if we don't know it, it will be very hard for the funder to understand what that is. But more importantly than the vision, the mission and the vision, and those very nice statements that we put on our website, it's what that means in terms of what's our role in the ecosystem. So what is it that we bring to the table that other actors in the are not? And sometimes it's quite simple. Again, if you're running a long-term care facility, it can just in a particularly location that has a lack of such services, it can be that you are filling a gap in that, whether it's a town, a village, wherever it is, you are filling a gap in that particular community. But sometimes it can be a little bit more nuanced than that. It can be, yes, you are running an hospice that serves a particular community, people with particular needs that other facilities are not as well equipped to serve. So again, really, what do you think makes you unique? That's very important to one, identify and be aware, and make sure that whenever you're writing a proposal, that's translated into that proposal. Because again, it is true that there are many charities in Canada. We're talking about roughly 90,000 throughout the country. Many of those are in the same space that you are working on. So we want to, it is a pretty competitive landscape, the fundraising and the landscape. So we need to find ways to set ourselves apart. Now, when I say here your strengths, you could interpret it as, again, what is my role? What is it that I'm doing better than other organizations in the ecosystem? But in this case in particular, I'm thinking about what are your strengths when it comes to finding funders? And that can be a number of things. It can be that, for example, on your board, you have a number of individuals that are working for large corporations that happen to give out a lot of money throughout the year. So that would definitely be a strength. You having connections within organizations that give out significant grants is definitely a strength. So you should play that strength, and you should use those connections to connect with the folks within those institutions that can then provide you some great tips to apply to proposals, to grant opportunities they might have. But oftentimes also just having let's call an introduction call, that will really help your odds when the time comes to submit a proposal. Another strength could be, for example, the fact that you have been working in the community for many years and you're well known, and that means that, for example, all the elected representatives in your area know you, and that means that they can write letters of support. That means that whenever good funding opportunities come to mind from the government side of things, they will probably think of you and let you know ahead of other people, because it does happen, and you probably experienced this yourself, that sometimes there are government grant opportunities that have a very short window, or sometimes they're just by invite only, for a number of reasons. And if your organization, is well known, well established, and keeps in touch with your elected representatives, that is definitely an opportunity. And again, one of the strengths that I would highlight in this case. That there's many others. I'm just giving 2 examples for the sake of time. And of course, another thing that we should keep in mind, again, before we start to look for funding opportunities, is how much money do we need and how fast do we need it. Again, if we need a lot of money, then that will most likely mean that you will have to apply for a government grant, because of all the institutions, it is the one that tends to write the biggest checks. But it's also it's a double-edged sword. It's also the one that tends to take a longer period of time. Not always. Again, there's definitely instances where there's a shorter turnaround time, but for the most part, it is of comparing to companies and foundations, the government does tend to take longer. So definitely, if you're in a rush, I wouldn't turn to the government for quick money. I would look to existing donors or people that you have a connection to, that even if they're not funding you currently, but they have done it in the past, and they have a good, you still keep a good relationship with them. If the case is that you need quick money, I would look to your existing network and organizations that don't have a very strict bureaucratic application process. So that those are 2 things that that how much and how fast you need it. Those are things that you should keep in mind when, again, looking at what funding opportunities are out there. Okay, let me just see. Just looking at the chat, making sure there's no questions so far. All good. Okay, so in this exercise of finding the right opportunities, there's a number of ways to do this, and I'm going to just highlight some of them. So in terms of where to find such opportunities, as I had mentioned briefly, there's your board and the board of directors. These are folks that certainly are very committed to the work that you do and to your organization, and they tend to come from a range of institutions. So some are working for the government, others are working for corporations. Whatever it is, these are folks that have a network that can be very useful when it comes to fundraising. And again, it doesn't have to be. I certainly been in a place where I work with charities that didn't necessarily have millionaires, let alone billionaires, on the board, but it doesn't mean that they don't have a connection. Again, even if they're a middle tier manager in a bigger organization, they can certainly help you connect with someone that can help you with the grant opportunity. Again, if they happen to work in the government, as I had said previously, they can certainly be a good connection. Again, your network is definitely one of the places where you should start, because it is true that we're talking about grants, and the quality of your proposal is certainly very important. But if there's one thing that I've noticed, and this is very similar to what we see when we are applying for a job, it's not just the quality of your resume, the quality of your experience, it's also getting the exposure. It's also getting the referrals from a third party, because at the end of the day, you do see it a lot that the same way those that are hiring tend to, take a closer look at folks that were referred by someone they know and trust. The same happens with a lot of funders. Again, depends on the funders. Definitely, if we're talking about the government, they tend to be a funder, for example, like the Ontario Children Foundation. Certainly, letters of support and referrals doesn't really work there. But if we're talking about a corporate funder, a big company, I definitely seen the case where, again, we had a good connection with the corporate funder before we even applied. So by the time we applied, we already had a very good feeling that we were going to be successful, because again, there were already several conversations that showed that there was a good fit there. Other places where you can find opportunities, again, foundations. They most of them, at least the bigger ones, have newsletters. They have LinkedIn pages, and they tend to share a lot of opportunities that other foundations grants that are about to open. I give 3 examples there: the Ontario Children Foundation, the McConnell Foundation, the Laidlaw Foundation. But again, any foundation that has at least a couple of staff members tends to have a newsletter, and one of the things they do is they not only promote their own grant opportunities, but they also promote other foundations and government and corporations funding opportunities. So I know it can be a lot of newsletters to sign up to. I definitely spend a lot of my time just, going through different newsletters and just deleting a lot of those newsletters. But again, it is how one of the best ways to find about those opportunities. Same with the government. Again, whether it's your local MP or city councillor, they are the Department of Health and Senior Care. Most of them have newsletters, and they have their own pages on LinkedIn that you should follow, so that you can make sure that you know of the opportunities when they come up. A few more. I do see that there's a repeat here. Apologies. Foundation Comms shows up twice. But the first one, Funders Database, that is a very good one. I give the example of 2 there. So Grant Connect and Grant Station. Environment Funders obviously it's not really beneficial here, but Grant Connect in particular is probably one of the best ways, one of the best places to find funding opportunities. And on that note, I am curious if the ones that have used or use Grant Connect currently, so that's by Imagine Canada, if you can just put it in the chat or raise your hand just to have an idea how prevalent it is amongst this crowd. We're talking about the database by Imagine Canada, where you can find different funders. And so if you do use it, please raise your hand, or you can just say yes in the chat, just so I have an idea, because it will be relevant for an exercise that we'll do in a little bit. And of course, the last place to find funding opportunities, it's definitely looking at the funders that support other organizations. Again, most organizations recognize, as they should, their funders in their website, in their annual report. So that's definitely a place where you can look for funders that might be a good match to you. Obviously, as I say there, if these organizations happen to be within like neighboring organizations, if you have a good relationship with them, I would avoid going after their funders. But of course, if it's an organization from a different city, or if they were the ones to actually encourage you to look at their funders and to look for funding opportunities there, by all means. Okay, so I believe I didn't see anyone raising their hands, and Trisha did share that she has heard of it but not used it. Yeah, I would consider it for the ones that don't use it. It is a paid tool, but it's not very expensive. I can't tell you exactly right now what's the cost. The subscription fee does vary depending on the size of your organization. And there's actually a possibility that depending on where you live, you might be able to access it for free. There are some public libraries. I know that the Toronto Public Library does this, where you can, if you have a membership of the library, you can access Grand Connect for free. So do check out if the public library in your community does provide similar benefits, because again, this is a very great tool that where you can find funders based on Ottawa libraries also provided. Great. So again, if you're a member, take advantage of it. Or if you're not a member, consider becoming one. But it is a great tool to, on one hand, to find funding opportunities, but on the other hand, which is something that we'll do next, to understand whether a funder is a good fit with your organization and the project in particular that you wish to see funded. Now, I am going to take a couple of minutes to see if anyone has any questions or comments so far. If you do, feel free to drop it in the chat or raise your hand and unmute yourself. Okay, I think gonna give it a few more seconds. In the meantime, thank you, Reem, again for the poll. Okay, again, there's a fairly broad range of amounts looking to be raised by the folks on this call. 30% want to hope or plan to raise more than $500,000. Others, are just the second most common, or actually the first most common response was between 100K and 250K. But there's also a few folks that are, looking to raise smaller amounts between 20 and 50K. So that's good. It shows that we have a diverse crowd when it comes to how much they wish to raise in the coming 12 months. All right. Now, I did want to, on this topic of qualifying prospects, and I did want to do a little bit of a hands-on example of how we can do that, because again, I really believe that understanding whether a funder is a good fit with your organization can really be, in my opinion, it really makes a difference, because it is, as I said, it's not just about whether our proposal it's well written. It really lays out what we do, why we're seeking additional funds, and what our impact is. At the end of the day, if the funder is not well aligned with your project for whatever reason, whether it's because they don't fund organizations in your region, or they're simply all they are maxed out for the year. It is, again, it is quite important to understand whether they're a good fit. And one of the ways that I do that, and I'm gonna change, and just, I hope that you can, I'm not sharing the slides anymore. Can someone confirm that they see the Government of Canada list of charities. Yes. Thank you, Azra. So there's usually two tools that I use. Thank you, Nadine. There's usually two tools that I look to when it comes to getting a better sense of, again, whether a funder is a good fit um, for my organization and my project in particular. And again, it's good to differentiate the two, because again, it can be a good fit for the organization, but maybe it's not the best fit for the project, depending on the project at hand. Let's say we're talking about capital projects that we want to enhance or facilities. Some organizations are have a very strict policy when it comes to funding or not funding capital projects. So it's definitely worth having a look at their website and see if there's such eligibility criteria on hand. As I said, I tend to use either Grant Connect or the CRA, especially if the funders in question are foundations. As again, many of you probably, or if not all of you, are aware of this database by the CRA. Basically, you can find information on any registered charity and qualified donees in Canada. And again, foundations are also qualified donees themselves. So what I do is that if I have a particular funder in mind that that I that I'm thinking of applying to, I'm gonna look them up and see what organizations they fund. Now, I did, just bear with me a second, because I did have one that I thought could be a good example. Let me just see. I have the name somewhere in here. Because I do want to, you look for a funder that can make sense given the programs and services that you provide. Okay, so I found it. Now, so what I do is, if I'm working with an organization that has Grant Connect, well, probably start there. However, the information that I'm looking for, which is usually, again, how much are they giving and who are they giving to, can also be found in the CRA database. And again, the reason why I'm looking for such information is it's simple. Again, one, I want to have a better idea of how much they're giving. If that doesn't happen to be very clear on their website, and I also want to see who are they giving to, for a couple of reasons. One, how many organizations are they giving to a year? Is it just half a dozen? Is it 30? Is it usually to different organizations throughout the year? Is it always for the same? Because all of these things will help me determine whether, again, they are a good use of my time. Because it is true that the fundraising landscape is very competitive, that there's much more demand for funding than supply. But it is also true that there are multiple funding opportunities out there, and we cannot apply to all of them. So it is important to determine whether the funder and the grant opportunity in question is a good fit for us before going ahead. So what we can see here is, just going back a step, what I did was I put the name of a foundation that I, as a grant writer that's looking for funding for organizations that support seniors, particularly seniors that need palliative care. I put their name here, and then it led me to their profile. And the information in particular that I'm looking for is, again, how much have they given in the past, and and who were the recipients. So if I scroll down, I'll see again that gives to other registered charities and qualified donees. And if I click on that link, it will tell me what organizations received those amounts, where are they based, and of course, from there I can dig a little bit deeper and look their websites up. But what I can see is that, okay, this foundation funded 12 organizations last year. It's a decent number. We can see that they fund so Markham, Hamilton, Toronto. These are all the GTA. Grimsby not as much. Hamilton. So what does this say? That most of these organizations are in the GTA or Southern Ontario. That being said, that wouldn't probably be a good fit for your organizations because you're not in the GTA or in Southern Ontario. But also, going back to how much we need, we can see how much they give. So we see $10,000, $45,000. So that said, if we are targeting funders that give 100K or more, then this wouldn't be the best funder for us. So that's just a way to get a better sense of, again, how good of a fit this funder can be. Obviously, I could look up many other funders, but one of the things that I do is where I usually start, especially if I don't know the funder, is looking them up either on Grant Connect, or if I don't have the Grant Connect subscription, on the CRI database, and again, see how much they give, what organizations they give to. In this case, I do know from looking up earlier that many of these organizations do indeed support palliative care and work with seniors. So the problem, that wasn't necessarily the problem. But again, the fact they don't fund organizations in our region probably means that they're not the best fit. And also, again, if I'm looking for bigger gifts in the 5 digits, then this also wouldn't be the best fit. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to go through this, to do this exercise, because again, not only did a lot of people share that was one of their main concerns, is how to find funders, but also understand whether they're a good fit. And this is one of the ways that I do it, coupled, of course, with all the other platforms where we can find those opportunities. Okay, moving on. So diving deeper into grant writing, I'm gonna take you through some of the most common grant proposals, and share some of the tips, and some of the things that tend to work, that have worked for me in the past, when it comes to addressing those questions. So obviously, all of you, sorry, I didn't want to put this in. I just want to put this in the full window mode so that you don't see my tabs. Oh. There we go. All right. Now, I think I skipped one of the. Okay, so as I'm sure most of you, I've seen most of these questions in perhaps in slightly different words. Most grant proposals start with this with this question, which is, give us a brief description of your organization, but more important is a brief project description. So we know what your organization is about, but what is it that this grant in particular, what is it that this amount of money will fund at your organization? And obviously, your answer will really depend on whether you're looking to launch a new program, a new service, whether you're just looking to increase the number of people you serve. But one thing that I strongly recommend is that and especially when you don't have a lot of words, and in this case, 100 words is not a lot. Even if it was 200, it's not a whole lot in many cases. But start with going straight to the point. Again, if you are looking to increase your funding to increase the number of people you serve, then start by saying that we are looking to receive whatever $100,000 grant from the XYZ Foundation because we wish to tackle the wait list that we are experiencing right now and be able to serve X% more people than we have been doing for the past few years. I would make that my first sentence. Again, make it very clear. What is it that why are you applying for this grant? And then you can provide some more details. Keeping in mind that you want to tell them the why, and you already did. Why are you seeking the money? Who are you looking to serve? At this point, it might be clear already. If it's not, then definitely highlight, what community you're serving, seniors in the community X. Again, you can be as precise as you can. Whether we're talking about folks that are part of a particular ethnic community or folks that are part of a particular that socioeconomic status. Do be precise of who you're serving. And of course, again, depending if we're talking about increasing or just doing improving the program, tell them right off the bat why is it that you want to either increase it or you want to improve the program. Again, if it's increased, usually the best way to say is that we have a wait list of 50, 100, 200 people, how many people it is. If it is improved or just launch a new program, give the first tidbits of information. And I say the first ones because, again, this is usually the first questions and you will have time to expand. But do say, again, we have a wait list of XYZ number of people, or we want to hire more physiotherapists or just personal support workers or nurses because we see there's clearly an insufficient ratio between the number of professionals and the number of patients we have. Or you can say that, for example, if you're looking to hire a counselor, you can see that you've been witnessing higher levels of perceived isolation and decreased mental health, and therefore you want to hire a professional that will help address just that. So again, address the why, the who, and the how very briefly. Again, we want to keep the funder and whoever is reviewing the application interested from the get-go. As for the other questions, again, project activities. Again, you all know how your programs work, how your organization operates, but whoever is on the other side doesn't. So do be as detailed, and again, avoid using technical terms or terms that the average person might not understand, because even though you might know them, you work in the sector, oftentimes the people on the other and reviewing the application are not experts, and they won't have the same level of knowledge about technical terms used in your sector. But again, be as thorough as you can within the limits that it's given to you, because you want to make it very clear that you know what you're talking about, you know what resources, including people and money and equipment, that is needed to make your project a success. So this is your chance. And a couple of tips there. Oftentimes we are asked in the grant proposal, okay, when is your project starting? And let's say, okay, our project, we're applying now. We'll hear about if the grant is successful or not in February. So we'll say, okay, our project will start on March 1st. For example, if you are, if this project involves hiring people, and then don't fall for don't make the mistake of saying, okay, we'll roll out the project, this new program, there's this enhanced program that we want to launch right on the first day of the project start. When you usually ask you what the project starts, it doesn't mean the program in particular that you're looking to launch or enhance. They're talking about the broader project that will make that program possible. So that means that you do have to mention that, okay, we are going to hire these people, and this is going to take, let's say, about a month. We do have to review the program plan that we have for this, because things have changed in the meantime. The needs from your community have changed. We have to adapt to, higher costs or a higher demand than we were expecting. So again, do take these things into consideration. Don't say that you're going to start a project, roll out a program right away, because that will likely mean that you're not thinking of the full picture, and that might trigger some red flags from whoever is reviewing. Again, explain the needs. I touched upon this on the first question, but again, if we're talking about a wait list, most foundations and funders in general do take your word for it, so they won't need any evidence. But again, if we're talking about hiring more staff because you feel like there's a new need that needs to be addressed within your constituents, then do provide quote surveys that you have done. Surveys and testimonials are usually very well received. They're fairly easy to do. If you have external data, it's also very well received. But it is, thankfully, there is more openness from funders these days to take internal data as sufficient and as valid as external data by think tanks and whatever government institutions it is. Thankfully, there is a shift to giving more weight to internal data, but if you can use both to justify again why you need to enhance this program, why you need more resources, why do you need to expand your facilities, by all means. This last question, very quickly, it's very much tied to the project activities. Again, it's about demonstrating why you have the capacity to receive this additional funds and make this project possible. It is particularly important when you're going for bigger grants, grants that might be, for example, very close to what your operating budget is right now, because a funder will usually look at the large request. And again, large it's relative. If again your organization has an operating budget that's $1 million and you're asking for 800K, then that's a very large request for you. Again, if you have a $10 million budget, then 800K is not that significant, and the funder won't be as concerned whether you can handle that that amount of money. But again, especially if we're talking about amounts of money that are very close to what your operating budget is, you will need to address that, because you can be sure that the funders, most of them, will think, okay, are they able to handle this amount of money? Are they able to scale their operation successfully? And that's where you're going to talk about, other significant grants that you received in the past. Again, the expertise within your team and within your board. But again, that is a very important question that you should be ready to address. Okay, let me just see if there's any questions or comments so far. Again, by all means, you don't have to wait for the end and the Q&A time to drop any comments or questions. And if you do see a question that you have encountered in previous grant proposals that I'm not addressing, by all means, you can drop it in the chat, and I'm happy to speak to it. A question that's, it's been seen in many grant proposals, and it's even more current and important in the last few years, is has to do with EDI, so equity, diversity, and inclusion, and it's particularly relevant if you happen to serve equity-seeking groups. On that note, what I would say, especially again, if you serve equity-seeking groups, is that you demonstrate that you are consulting that these folks, that they are being part of your needs assessment, that they are part of your design process when it comes to again redeveloping or launching new programs, that these folks are thought about, one, designing the programs, that they're involved in the programs, in the design of the programs itself, and as importantly, they are part of the decision making. So whether it's because they're staff, whether because they're represented on the board, and again, this can be whether it's folks with, again, in your case, I know that most of you, if not all of you, work with seniors. So again, how can you demonstrate to the funder that seniors are part of this needs assessment, that they are part of the decision making, whether it's because you have a consulting body that's composed of the folks that of your community members, your clients, whether it's because you have a mandate for a certain percentage of folks in your board to be seniors themselves. Of course, I could say that your staff could also be composed of seniors, but and that can be the case. But as seniors, we want them to be taking some well-deserved time after many years of working. But again, all this to say that oftentimes when talking about representation and EDI in general, we tend to think about racial minorities or folks from the 2SL LGBTQ community, but that applies to really any that can be applicable to in the broader sense to the community that you serve, your clients, and how you make sure that whatever strategies and new plans that you're making, it's based on what they're telling you, and yes, and what they shared is their, in fact, their needs. Another important question is has to do with how do you demonstrate sustainability, in particular when your project comes to the end and you now have to maintain the project, if this is not a one-off project, which most of the cases it's not. How can you demonstrate to the funder that you have the ability to again to maintain the program as it is, or maintain this increased space that you're now using? So oftentimes this goes down to again being able to raise more money that can replace the funder, the grant that this funder is considered giving you. Again, this is a very important one. Funders do not want to, and it goes back to the capacity. Funders do not want to give money to an organization that's not prepared to, in a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, doesn't matter how many years it is, doesn't have the capacity to, when their grant comes to an end, to be able to continue the work that this new grant enabled, using other sources. The reality is that most funders tend to have a cutoff. So they might fund you once, and they will have at least a number of years that they won't consider another grant request. That means that you will have to rely on other funders. So that's the time when you talk about, again, other funders that you are approaching. That's the time when you talk about a fundraising strategy that you've been developing that is looking into diversifying your fundraising stream so that it's well balanced between government, corporate donors, individual donors. And it's also that's a very good time when you mention, and hopefully that's the case, that this project that you are seeking funds for from Foundation X is also being supported by Company Z and the department from the provincial government. That it always makes for a very strong case when you show that you have other funders on board that are behind this project that you're looking to make happen. Again, whether it's enhancing a program, piloting a new service, or just increasing the space that you operate in. Let me just have a sip of water. Now, budget, and how much we're tied to the budget, how much money we're asking for. Again, super important. As you know, there are, for a couple of reasons, there are funders that simply will simply not award you the grant if they don't agree with your budget. Thankfully, there's not. Most of them will just come back to you and propose a smaller amount. But we all know that funders such as, for example, the Ontario Children Foundation, if they don't agree with your budget, they'll simply say no. They might think that the proposal is great. All the questions had great grades, but when it came to the budget, they thought that it was either unrealistic, that whatever items were being asked for in the budget did not match the plan of activities. So that being said, you have to be very intentional with the budget. You have to make sure that whatever activities you mention, whatever resources you said you would need, it has to be reflected in the budget. Even if it's to say, okay, these services will be provided by another funder, or they will be, we already have them for whatever reason. Even if it is, even if you have a line item that says 0, and then you provided the context as to why you don't need their money for that particular budget line. But it's very important that, again, whatever is mentioned throughout the application, in particular in the plan of activities, is reflected in the budget. But as importantly, that your request is reasonable. Especially if we're talking about a funder that either says yes or no. There's no yes, but we'll give you less. If it's a funder that will simply say no if they don't agree with the amount, then you have to be super thorough with the request that you're making, and think again about the context that you're providing as to how you came up with that amount, but also take into account your size and whether the amount that you're asking can be perceived as too much for an organization your size. But also, again, knowing that we are We are in the operating in the ecosystem where there's a lot of organizations and a lot of folks that need funding. It is important to demonstrate that whatever you're asking is very much needed, and you're not just being greedy, and you're not just asking for money just for the sake of asking, that you're being mindful of, again, what are the actual costs of your project, and again, you're also not trying to, for lack of a better word, scheme anyone and ask for much more than what is actually needed. Again, that will be interpreted by the funder, how much we're asking, as a way of the being able to understand whether you truly know your project and how much and what it means in financially speaking. But it also speaks to your to how reasonable you are with the budgeting. And also, I've seen this happen a couple of times where a funder clearly said, "Oh, we will not give you more than 50K, for example," and then a colleague of mine asking for 90K. I think that is telling in a few ways. That shows that we were not really paying attention, or two, we just disregarded the feedback that they gave us. And again, that doesn't sit very well with most funders. Okay, a few more questions. Where will the project take place, and what's the demographic you serve? I had mentioned this one previously. Again, it is very important to be clear as to where this is taking place, because some funders some are actually mandated by law to only fund organizations in certain provinces. And if it's not by law, it's by their bylaws and their funding priorities. So again, do make sure that you are specific in terms of what municipality, what particular community it is, what is what are what is the demographic, what is the socioeconomic status, what is the ethnical background of the folks that you're serving, and especially again if the funder in question does highlight that they are looking to fund a group of a particular community for whatever reason it is. The impact, again, that's always one of the hardest questions to answer. Charities in general, whether they're big or small, they always tend to have a hard time finding the level of data that funders are looking for. I get it. It's hard work, and that's just one of the many things that the charities have to do, among other things. In particular, the most important thing, which is to serve our constituents. But whether we like it or not, it is a very important question. And the good thing is, as I said, internal data and things such as testimonials is being given more weight than it has perhaps a few years ago. But also, one of the things that I would highlight when talking about impact is that oftentimes, and I still do that sometimes, and I definitely did that in the beginning of my career, and definitely seen many peers of mine doing that, which is tend to focus on the output, so and not as much on the outcomes. And most funders tend to care more about the outcome. So what is the ultimate shift in that took place? What is the ultimate change that took place because of that funding? So an example could be, and again, for most of you, it's a bit more straightforward, because at least the ones are simply talking about, providing services to seniors, and whether it's, providing 24/7 care for them or in-house support. In that case, just saying that we helped XYZ number of people, that's important because in some cases that's what's needed. It's like people just being there to help them. But even then, it has to go beyond that. It has to go beyond the how many people we served and how many meals we served or how many people we are hosting in our programs. It's what goes beyond that. Okay, so we hosted this number of people for this recreational program for seniors. Let's say it was yoga for seniors. Okay, so what did that mean? We provided yoga for dozens or hundreds of people in a year. What did that mean? Did it mean that people, were one, happier just because they got out of the house, they made new friends, they felt, physically stronger again? That is a pretty good outcome that you can highlight. Let's say it is, that means yoga for seniors. Let's say that you have a Meals on Wheels program. Again, just highlighting the output would be how many meals you provided. And don't get me wrong, you do want to mention that as well. But you also want to be able to capture and then translate that into in the grant proposal. What did that mean? Again, of course, in many cases, the fact that you're providing meals means that you're addressing food security, which is absolutely it's super important. It's essential. But in some cases, and I've seen it from other Meals on Wheels programs, which is it's not just about the food, is having someone knock on their door, asking them how they are, providing some food that it's not made by them, that it's delicious, and just having those 5 minutes of interaction, and it really helps improve these people's quality of life and increase their levels of inclusion and overall well-being. And sometimes, again, even though you're just there to deliver a meal, Joe happens to mention that they're not feeling very well and they wish they could go to their doctor, but it's far, their daughter is not available to take them there. And again, someone from a volunteer that's delivering the meal can then put them in contact with someone else in the organization that can then drive Joe to that doctor appointment. So all of these things, again, it's important to highlight what are the outcomes of all these great services and programs that you're providing. Again, what does it mean in terms of again, the most basic elements, such as providing much needed 24/7 care for seniors that need it. But again, what does it mean in terms of how many more years these folks are going to live, and also things such as how did you contribute to, and this one, it's not necessarily the easiest one to show, but what does it mean in terms of lowering the burden on the local ER services, for example. But again, you can, with surveys and testimonials, you can show outcomes such as, these folks' well-being and mental health overall increased. They are more mobile because of the yoga and the physiotherapy services that we are providing. They feel more connected, and because they get to live in a home that has a warm environment. All of these things are very important to show to the funders. And again, some of them are not that hard to track, and all it takes is a survey, a testimonial, and that can go a long way showing the impact of that you have. Okay, I know it's a lot of talking. We'll get to the questions in a minute. I hope you have some. If not, I have an alternative. The last question. I think it's the last. Is there another slide? Okay, AI. Okay, we'll talk about AI in a minute. But just this last question. And this one is a little bit tied to this, to a previous question that we talked about, which had to do with the sustainability of the project after the current project that's being funded or by funder X, is what happens after that. So, and that is particularly relevant if you're talking about, launching a pilot project. So what's the next steps? What have you done to, if again this project is successful, again, whether it's a program, whether it's increasing the size of your facilities, whether it's hiring more people, what happens after that? Again, how will you scale it if it's successful and the need still is there? There is still a wait list. There is still a need to make the project even bigger. Again, show the funder that you're thinking ahead, that you are aware that, even with the funds that you will receive and the project that you'll put in place in the next year or 2 or 3 years, that there might be a need to enhance this project even further. And if that's the case, how are you going to do it? Again, mention things such as consulting with your community members, with your clients, having already, keeping an eye on other funders that will help you achieve this scale up of the project. Again, what are the resources that you anticipate you'll need in the future that you might not need right now, whether it's because the project is still small or because, simply you do not want to take such a big step right now. Again, important to demonstrate that we are not doing this out of as a project that we just put together quickly to secure a few funds from a funder, that this is part of a larger strategy and vision that your organization has to best serve your community members. And again, that's really what the funders want to see. They want to see that you are thinking about things, you know how to achieve them, and you're thinking about the long-term impact and not just what's happening tomorrow as much as, when we work for charities, that's often what we're forced to do, which is think about what's right ahead of us. Okay, I am going to jump to AI, but I also recognize that I've been talking for quite a while. So if there's any questions so far, any comments, feel free to drop them in the chat. We will have time for a longer Q&A, but if there's any burning questions, by all means. Just gonna take a few seconds to have a sip of water. Okay. I don't see any hands or comments. So let's move on. Now, obviously, a burning topic these days is AI and what that means for really anything in our lives, but in this case in particular for grant writing. Now, I can say that I've used AI. I didn't start using it right from the beginning because, as most of you, when something new comes out, like you're skeptic and like you're wondering whether it's actually has any benefits, whether it's ethical. But what I can say is, in my experience as someone that's been writing grants for quite a few years now, AI and certain AI tools, and there's many out there, and I definitely don't know all of them. It can be very beneficial. It can make the grant writing process and grant research, although on the research side of things, I'm I haven't I haven't found a great tool when it comes to that. But when it comes to the writing, there's definitely advantages to using AI. It can make the process a little bit more efficient. Um, and that is particularly important, again, if you literally just heard of a grant proposal that's due in 2 days and you really weren't counting on it. So again, you literally have a couple of days to put it together. So it is helpful in that way, but more importantly, um, it can help you make your proposals better. And let's be a bit more specific. Personally, I use three tools that come to mind. So one of them is, ChatGPT, as expected. Um, ChatGPT can be useful in a number of ways. In my case, in particular, I use it to for a number of things. For example, let's say that I just wrote a question that's a great question. I feel very good about the content, but it's 250 words long, and the funder, the proposal only lets me put in 200 words. So I usually ask ChatGPT to help me cut it down. And after ChatGPT does that, I review it, and I ensure that the essence of the question, of the answer, is still there, that it didn't cut any relevant information, and everything is still accurate. There is another tool that it's not as well known, but it's possible that many of you have heard of it, which is Perplexity AI, which shares a lot of features with ChatGPT. Personally, I've been one of the things that I find very interesting about Perplexity, that ChatGPT, at least the paid version, it is increasingly doing better, is the fact that Perplexity provides you with the sources of the information that it shares, whilst ChatGPT, at least until recently, you just had to guess where they were getting the information from. Perplexity shares the information, the sources that they're using right away. It's obviously very useful when, for example, you are answering a question such as, provide data that backs up the need that you're claiming you have. So again, if you're looking for reports, Perplexity can be used as I oftentimes say, as almost a super Google, in the sense that it provides more, to say, curated information, and not as raw as Google does. But Perplexity itself is also has a lot of the same capabilities of ChatGPT in terms of generating text. And again, when I use either Perplexity or ChatGPT to help me draft an answer, because I feel like I have the content there, but I still don't love how it sounds. So sometimes, as an exercise, I ask Perplexity or ChatGPT to suggest an answer. So what I'll do is, I'll say, okay, I'm writing a grant for this funder. This is the question. This is the content that I wish to see in the answer. What would you suggest a good answer would be? And they give some good suggestions, and oftentimes I use a lot of that, a lot of those suggestions. And again, I feel comfortable doing that because I know the content that is there is accurate. It is based on what the organization actually does, what the organization measures, and what the organization, what is, reflective of the organization's work. But it does happen that sometimes we're just in a writing block, and Perplexity and tools such as ChatGPT do provide some good tips as to how can we put that great content, all of those ideas that we have together already. We're just having a hard time, um, putting it in a nice format, in a nice narrative. I will say, however, that it is true that sometimes if it's a new project, if it's something that we haven't gathered a lot of data and evidence about, that we can simply ask these tools, ChatGPT and Perplexity and many others that are out there, to just provide us some data and provide us some ideas for what a program outline could look like. Just be very mindful that these tools are still far from being perfect, that oftentimes the assumptions and the data that they provide don't necessarily match. I've definitely asked, for example, Perplexity or ChatGPT to help me summarize some documents and help me draw some key takeaways from certain reports, and they were just not accurate. They were, I think there's a term for that. I think it's but I'm missing it. Where pretty much the AI tool is just coming up with conclusions that are simply not there. So it is super important that your fact check whatever either of these tools are giving you. Most of the time, what I do is the content is already validated by us. I'm just using it as a tool to help me trim it down, to brainstorm some ideas. But they are definitely helpful. I understand that there can be some concerns when it comes to sharing information with a tool that will obviously be able to store that information. That's why in my based on what experts recommend, and also just my level of comfort, and whenever I use these tools for the purpose of grant writing, I use paid features. They're not very expensive, but there is at least that's what the experts say, that there is an increased level of security and privacy in terms of the data that you share with the paid version of these tools than if you're just using the free version of any of these tools. But yeah, definitely recommend giving it a shot if you're not using it already. I can imagine many of you are already using these tools. But and we're almost reaching the time to jump into the Q&A here. But I would say that again, if you're not doing this already, one thing that I found very useful when it comes to both examples that I have provided here, Perplexity and ChatGPT, is the fact that you use the same thread. Because so thread is pretty much the window that is open each time you're asking a question or giving a task to the ChatGPT or Perplexity. It's what I do is once I start a thread, so a micro page, let's say for a certain project, each time I go back to ask for certain things from the AI tool, I use the same thread. And the reason why I do that is that one, at least until recently, neither of the tools shares data amongst the different micro pages, or what they call the threads, meaning that information that you shared about the project in that thread won't translate into another thread, meaning that information gets lost and you have to repeat it. But also, once you start correcting the AI tool, once you start saying, no, this is what we do, this is how many people we serve, this is where we serve, this is the language that I want us to use, so keep this in mind for next suggestions that you make, the tool actually starts to learn. And that's one of their designs, is that they learn with the feedback that you give them. meaning that as time goes by, as you ask either of these tools for help, if you're using the thread that you usually use for that project, the questions tend to get better and better as time goes by, because they're already incorporating the feedback that you've given them, the information that you've given them. So they're starting, the answer that you'll get tend to be increasingly more accurate, because again, they're already being fed all this information and all this context about the work that your organization does. Now, there is another tool. I'm sure all of you have used it or seen it at one point, because they do a lot of ads, which is Grammarly. Personally, I find it very useful, because again, there isn't always the time to proofread, and after many hours of working on a proposal, your eyes start to be incapable of detecting certain typos. So Grammarly is certainly makes the proofreading process much more efficient, and they also have a feature these days to improve the language that you use in the answer, and they give some very good suggestions. So they are, when it comes to that, they're certainly better than Perplexity and ChatGPT when it comes to simply flourishing the language that you use in the answer. All right, I think we're done with the content. So at this point, it's so what time is it? We still have 30 minutes to go. I have a suggestion. So one is you can take the next 50 minutes or so to do an activity on your own, which is choose one or more questions that we went through, and just write an answer for it, with obviously with a certain project in mind. Just give it a try, and come back to us with a few comments or questions of challenges or that you might have had. Or an alternative is you can think of a funder that you're thinking of approaching in the next weeks or months, and you can go through whether it's the CRA database that we used earlier, or the Grant Connect if you happen to have it, and just see what you find about the funder. Again, whether it's how many organizations they fund, what's the average gift size that they give, do they have any restrictions, such as they don't fund capital or they don't fund operations. So that's a suggestion. People that want to take about 10 to 15 minutes to do that, and then come back and share what their experience was, by all means. Of course, I'm also happy to simply open the floor for any questions and comments